Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Let's get after it.
Please tell me I've heard of this Mystery Flesh Pit National Park in Texas. This is a gigantic, massive, living, breathing pit of flesh, and it basically mimics the human body. So look, they turned it into a national park, right? And they made it where people go in there and explore and all kinds of stuff. There's creatures inside of there. So here's one of the signs. Look at this. Environment beyond this bulkhead constitutes the interior systems of a living organism. This environment is actually hostile to human life. Serious injury. Dude, here's some of the creatures that you could come in contact with if you're walking around down there. So look, this one right here, this is like some stuff off King Kong Skull Island. You know what I'm saying? Look, if you see flora or fauna within the park, it does not appear to notice you. Back out of sight and change your course. Move out the air quietly. While many life forms within the pit seem to be tolerant to human presence in distances farther than 200 yards, each creature is different. So look, in 2007, the Permian Basin superorganism Natural Park, the Flesh Pit, experienced a catastrophic disaster which resulted in 750 fatalities, over 1,800 major injuries. In the weeks following, approximately 18,000 individuals from the surrounding communities sought medical and psychological treatment. So it had like a whole gastric system of, it was like a stomach was what they were inside. Kind of like the thing off Star Wars, that Boba Fett fell in, the big thing. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. A premature geobiological consumption event caused by catastrophic failure of the critical park infrastructure. Basically, some stuff got out and got a lot of people sick is what happened. What do y'all think about the old flesh pit, man?
Is that for real? That sounds so sci-fi. This sounds like something out of a movie. I'm going to have to do some digging and see if this is for real or not. Yeah, that sounds like sheer craziness. This is the first thing that pulls up on the top page of Google from Wikipedia. The park operated for about 30 years before being shut down due to the events of the 4th of July 2007. During the evening celebrations, unseasonably rainy weather and an electrical fault caused the pit to swallow the structures inside the park and then vomit. Still sounds like science fiction, doesn't it?
There's this obsession with space.
Yeah.
And Elon says, I believe he wants to occupy Mars by, is it 2025?
Yeah.
And why is the fascination in space? Has all of Earth been discovered? I mean,
no.
Is it hopeless here? Why is everybody moving to space?
Yeah, well, they're in their mind, it's hopeless here. And so we haven't even, really looked at the oceans that much. There's so much going on here on this planet. We haven't explored a lot of Earth. There's so much more to explore. However, based on the way we're set up as a global economic system, and you look at what's going on, it just seems to a lot of billionaires that the next big move is, let's go create a breakaway civilization and start our own thing over here, basically is what it is. And so we know that Mars has a lot of data over the last several decades. Why? Because we've sent so many missions to Mars, and so has Russia as well. If you look at the total amount of missions to Mars with rovers and satellites and calculate the expenditure, you're in the trillions of dollars. Now, why would anybody spend trillions of dollars to go visit a cold, dry rock? So it makes these billionaires start asking questions, and then they're in the in crowd so they can get some answers, and they find out that Mars is not exactly what we've been told in terms of habitability. We found out that Mars, we were told, was a cold, dry rock with no magnetic field, and DNA would just unravel based on the radiation. All of a sudden, the new science has come out. Mars has a rotating magnetic field, and not only that, it spins on its axis almost at the same exact speed of Earth. So a day on Mars is like 23.5 hours. And so that speed of the rotation on its axis creates something called bow shock, which bends and warps cosmic rays and radiation around the planet. Along with the weakened magnetic field, you can actually survive. Anything with DNA can survive on the surface. Also now, the science data has come back from the REMS unit we sent there, and there's oxygen.
There is oxygen.
There is oxygen on Mars. Yes, there's oxygen. Not only that, guess what they said about the soil? They said the soil on Mars is better for growing crops than the soil on Earth.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. How would they know this, right? Also, there's not just oxygen, but all the other gases that are needed to sustain biological life. Now, is oxygen still leaking into the atmosphere? Yes, it's still leaking out into the atmosphere, but there's somewhere being generated. They keep finding more and more oxygen is being generated from somewhere as it's leaking. So who's creating or what is creating this oxygen? I believe, my personal opinion, this is not in any science book, that there are trees and plant life on Mars based on some of the satellite images that I've seen. I'm going to send you some to show to your viewers with the source links and the so they can look it up themselves and see for themselves what I'm looking at. I believe that there's a source that is generating, and they've also found a lot of methane. Why is there methane? Methane is usually a byproduct of a biological process. There's a lot of methane on Mars, which means something is alive and something is creating waste product. And I don't see any cows on TV on Mars, so something's up there. They don't want to tell us what it is. So my personal opinion, based off of my research and what I've seen in some of these anomalies that exist in the images, they are building a breakaway civilization on Mars because that's the next big place to go and create their own thing. And there's an infrastructure that is being built there for a very, very long time. And when they arrive, they are going to inhabit those infrastructures. They're not going to be living in a tin can and walking around in a spacesuit until they die.
This goes on a little further, but I wanted to stop it right there to discuss what's been said so far. The idea that science had all of these concrete facts about Mars just a short while ago that have now been disproven, supposedly, and now have different concrete facts about Mars. How could you ever trust that it is inhabitable? How could you get on a ship and go knowing that they had it all completely backwards 10 years ago, and now they think it's completely the opposite? What are they going to think 10 years from now? Definitely wouldn't be on the first ship.
Billionaires that have the creature comforts of this planet, oceans, lakes, rivers, private jet flights, parties and mansions and everything else, aren't going to go live in a tin can until they die. There's something up there that they know exists, and they're going to live in it. Most of it, I believe, is underground, subterranean, and that's where they're going. And it's a great place to become an explorer. I wouldn't mind going to Mars. If I can get a way to get a ticket to Mars, I actually believe I would go. I would love to see some of these anomalies that I found up there with my own eyes.
I need to correct myself. It's by 2050.
2050?
Mars will be inhabited.
Well, actually, he's changed that. Okay, look at some of the older articles. Originally, it was 2020. Then I believe it was 2025, then 2030. Now it's 2050. Originally, he wanted to take 80,000 people. Then it went up from there. I think it's now 1 million people he wants to do it with. So it keeps changing. You might have heard 2025 or read it somewhere before, but the timeline keeps changing as the reality of the technology accomplishing its mission changes. And he's utilizing something extremely dangerous to get there. I would never go with Elon Musk technology because it has too many components. First, it has to lift off from Earth and go into space, not with no people on it. Then it's got to build its own space little station up there, right? And it's gonna fuel up. And then another thing has to launch and connect to that. And then they both have to take off and go to Mars. And then something's got to detach and go down to the surface and start building things and doing this and doing that and getting fuel ready for a return or whatever they need for whatever they need to create on the surface. And then after years of that going on, then people get in the ship and they take off and this other thing has to come back and they got to connect to that and they got to ride that to Mars. It's like, come on. You know how many accidents could happen? Are you kidding me? This is like a bad deck of cards just waiting to collapse. One mistake anywhere in any component and everybody's dead. So to me, it's a joke. I mean, I'd rather go on Branson. Richard Branson has a better idea. He's got a space plane. It takes off, it flies into space, it comes back. It doesn't even have the heat tiles underneath it because it drops through the atmosphere and comes straight back in, and then it flies back to the ground. I'd rather go on something like that than go on something that has 100,000 connections that have got to be made before you can even step foot on the surface.
Yeah.
Does that space plane purport that it can make it all the way to Mars, though? I think I would rather be in something that was tested and had shown efficacy before I would just pick something that looked like it was the safest. It's interesting to think that one day we may actually have people moving to Mars. Very likely, neither one of the current methods that are being worked on will be utilized. It'll probably be something completely new.
Klaus Schwab, God is dead, and the WEF is acquiring divine powers. God is dead, according to the World Economic Forum, who have also declared that Jesus is fake news and that WEF leaders have acquired divine powers to rule over humanity. Klaus Schwab's right-hand man, Yuval Noah Harari, has announced that the WEF has been so successful in its plans that it is acquiring divine powers of creation and destruction. The blasphemy doesn't stop here, because Yuval Harari has also promised that the WEF will also make humans into gods. When Bill Gates tells world leaders death panels will soon be required because normal people like us are no use for the elite.
And if that scares the hell out of you and you want to know what you can do about it, the World Economic Forum has made a statement publicly that the election in the United States in 2024, if Donald Trump is elected, it would be a death blow to the World Economic Forum. And I think they need a death blow. Not getting into politics, but do with that information as you will.
A limited access program means that nobody in Congress has to know about this.
The Khans Elite were a counterpoint group within different governmental organizations that were party to satanic ritual being used to make contact with these aliens or with these higher entities. And because of their Christian faith, they had the conviction. They saw this taking place and they're like, well, we don't need to be a part of this. This is what the Bible talks about in the worship of demons and of other gods. And especially being, using blood sacrifice and different types of black magic to be able to accomplish it. So they saw that and they didn't want to be a part of it. They also were able to tie this back to what Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard did in the desert in the late 40s.
You've got literally just the group, and maybe a director knows about it. Nobody else. It's completely classified. It's top secret. It's under lock and key. But I want to mention something. One of the bombshells that we dropped was that there's a declassified federal document. Anyone watching this interview can go find this document. It's on the FBI vault. Document 6751. It's a document from the 40s. It was written by a prominent member of academia, and it was submitted to the FBI. In this document, they make a case that entities are not space aliens, but that they're interdimensional or extra-dimensional entities that are crossing over from a plane known as the ethereal plane. Now, we know, as researchers of the New Age movement, we know that that is where the ascended masters are supposedly said to be on a high level. This ethereal plane is very popular, when you talk to people who astral project, people who channel, people who remote view, people who want to tap in or go on a trip, an ayahuasca trip, a DMT trip. Now, the federal government had this document in the 40s, and language was used in this document that came right out of the playbook of Theosophy. Now, the guy that received this document, this is so crazy. The federal agent receives a document, and look, the FBI is constantly bombarded with phone calls and letters and emails, and they just can't deal with all of the propaganda from citizens. People make stuff up, and it's just it's nothing. It's crying wolf. So the FBI has to really be careful what they accept and what they don't. But this was back in the 40s. So the guy that receives the document, he recognizes that this information was received through paranormal means. Matter of fact, the language used in the 40s was super normal. That's the old way of saying paranormal, super normal. So he says that all of this information was received through supernormal means, therefore we need to discount it. It's not valid information. Now that's the headline that he put, it's like a cover letter. If he really believed that, why did they classify the document? Why did they classify it and then forward it to all of these FBI prominent members at the highest level of security clearance? Why in the world would they classify it and lock it up if they didn't believe it? It wasn't until years later that they declassified document 6751, and I read this document and I'm thinking, okay, since the 40s, the federal government at the highest levels have known that these are not space aliens, that these are entities. coming from another dimension. Talk to someone who has worked in a deep underground military base, which we have. We've interviewed people. They talk about different classes of entities. None of that is really mentioned in 6751. It's more so an overall summarization of what's going on. Now, there were some information about traveling through the dimensions. There's some very fascinating tidbits in this document. And we don't really go too deep into the document other than referencing it in the film, because we had to go through, we've got over 300 declassified documents in our collection right now, all pertaining to aliens, UFOs, extrasensory perception, psychic activity that they're training people to operate in. The federal government has been training people in the occult since the 40s. Training them in how to operate in occult magic and occult sciences. Everything our Bible tells us is absolutely forbidden. Our federal government has been a part of this since the 40s. And I want to add, back in the 40s, they still promoted the idea of a Christian nation of America. Yet behind the scenes, it just goes to show that the people in charge of our government have been pacifying the society.
That one's a little difficult for me to believe. It's hard to put faith into a document, whether it was a declassified FBI document or not, when they freely admit that it was some dude's supernatural communication that gave him these ideas that he just wrote down and sent to the FBI. It's interesting. There's potentially something there, but it's just too hard to put any weight into something like that. So, and I haven't seen any evidence that the alien crafts that we see are actually powered by or being driven by alien beings or extraterrestrials or, beings from a different dimension or a different universe, whatever.
So now, what is the next big push to get money? And the public is getting tired of hearing about this 15 trillion missing, 17 trillion missing, 20 trillion missing. Now they said, okay, we got it, Space Force. We got a Space Force now. So don't be surprised if you see a UAP strike one of our vessels in the ocean with some type of a weapon, and then all of a sudden that gives the green light for the U.S. government or the military to say, hey, we need unlimited amount of money now to build space weapons, and we got to build defense, a space defense, and we got to build a space shield, and we got to blah, 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 blah. That turned into trillions of dollars in private monies that are going to projects from corporations that bid to the Pentagon. The Pentagon takes in money from the tax dollar. They keep a cut. The money then goes out to these private corporations to build this futuristic technology.
That's that government alien invasion false flag psyop that's going to happen. I think that's what he's getting into there. I don't see any signs of, or I can't wrap my head around this being an actual uptick in aliens coming here to Earth. The only logical explanation, as far as I'm concerned, is that the government's behind it. They've lied to us for so long, saying aliens don't exist, UFOs don't exist. The government doesn't study that stuff, and now it comes out we were being lied to. We're just being gaslit with meticulously curated information. Just the stuff they want us to know, to keep us curious and believing that something new is out there in the skies. That's all it is. They're going to attempt something like this.
This guy's a professional runner on Instagram, and he does these very cool videos running from one place to another. In this specific video, he caught something really strange on camera.
J'espère que vous allez bien, moi ça par la grâce de Dieu. Je suis comme ça en train d'aller à l'école. Mais je pense que le professeur ne va pas venir aujourd'hui. Donc je retourne à la maison. Je pars à l'école, c'est bon. Je ne retourne pas.
After being posted, the video amassed 17 million views and thousands of people were trying to figure out what exactly this creature is. Some were saying it's a skinwalker, others were leaving comments saying maybe it's an alien. Then someone said it could be a cannibal tribesman, but then I zoomed in slow mode on the video. It doesn't look like a tribesman. Pay very close attention to this part over here. Look at its eyes. It doesn't look like a tribesman, does it? Now I'm gonna slow-mo the video a bit more so you understand what I'm talking about. Pay attention to its arms. They seem very long. Doesn't look like a tribesman.
I cannot help. I can't help it. That looks like CGI. I know this is coming from a channel where a guy actually posts daily running videos, and he doesn't post this type of paranormal content very regularly. But man, does that not look like CGI to everybody else? It just looks too fake. It doesn't look like an actual person is there. The coloring and stuff is off. It looks like a black and white image being cropped into a color image. Like, it doesn't look like somebody with gray body paint or something like that on it. It looks like they forgot to add the coloring in the CGI. Again, I could be wrong. This could be some sort of a primitive native or something that's chasing this dude through the woods. I have no idea, but it looks fake.
So I'm going to read you. I thought this was absolutely fascinating. This is literally a first-hand account, a piece. This was a scrap of papyrus that was found in Caledonia, that was written by Centurion Titus Ursus of the 9th Legion. So he wrote, "This will probably be the last papyrus entry in my diary. Our legion was ambushed in the wild realm called Caledonian Forest, and was almost completely annihilated. Half of my first cohort is all that was left of the 9th Legion. We were pushed into the marshes, and we will probably die here, fighting bravely to the end in the name of Rome and our emperor. We were attacked by a demonic pack of barbaric Picts. They looked more like wild beasts than humans. Some of them were dressed in animal furs, painted with strange runic symbols. Others seemed to be two-legged beasts. They tore us apart as if we were made of paper. I saw our legatus and my brothers in arms being eaten alive. I will never forget their screams. The barbarians attacked us unnoticed, quickly and with wild fury, before disappearing into the thick fog. They would come at night. Our shields, swords and armour were no use here. The enemy we face seems to be the ancient wrath of some dark gods that we have awakened. We should have never invaded these lands. I can hear demonic howls at all times. They are coming. They are coming."
That sounds like they got into a fight with some Neanderthals or some missing link people. I kept waiting for him to say that they were like 7.5, 8 foot tall and had red hair, and that'd have been pretty wicked to find out these guys were fighting giants. But interesting to hear that depiction, and then I can't help but think back to all the depictions I've heard of Neanderthals and how they were like gorilla men with their strength, but some of them walked on all fours, some of them walked on their hind legs. So this is what this sounds like. It sounds like they were fighting Neanderthals. That's pretty fascinating.
Holy shit, this situation just got a whole lot fucking crazier. As you can see, former Chilean President Sebastián Pinera dies in a helicopter crash at 74 just yesterday. But before we go any further, I want everybody to be aware of the situation at hand and why we're talking about Chile. This just so happens to be what majority of southern Chile looks like at this very moment, as a series of deadly wildfires that killed over 112 people ravaged through the areas of southern Chile. Now stay with me, okay, because this is the primary reason of why we're speaking about Chile and the wildfires. As you can see, thousands of homes were destroyed in flames, which swept through the hilly settlements around the resort town of Viña del Mar starting Friday, propelled by high winds. A regional state of emergency was declared and a nighttime curfew imposed. Well, ironically, the same energy institutions that just so happen to be involved with rebuilding Maui in quotations, just so happen to have their 4th LA Conference on Sustainable Development of Energy, Water, and Environment Systems, just on the 14th to the 17th of January 2024, in where? Ironically, if you look into as to why they're interested in Viña del Mar, you might see here Viña del Mar is considered Chile's top city to live in, work in, and visit, and ranks second behind only Santiago for education. And then a whole bunch of other pros for the area as well. And that doesn't seem to be the only article that seems to be talking about things like that. Now what's ironic is the company named Hitachi just so happened to have a website just a couple months ago that just so happened to be deleted that clearly stated that Maui was supposed to be the first integrated SMART island. So that's pretty interesting, and the reason why it's so damn interesting is because of this. Oh wow, you mean the SMART City Business Chile headquarters are at where? Huh. And then if you just so happen to go to their summit website, you might find things like this. And has anybody gained notice as to how many lithium mines are being built in southern Chile? I'm not laying claim to anything officially being true, but I hope I can at least connect the puzzle pieces for you a little bit easier. In the last episode, I just so happened to speak about a certain satellite that just so happened to be above Maui the day of the wildfires. Now once again, not laying claim to anything officially being true, but the satellite just so happens to be owned by a company named CERN. CERN a couple years ago just so happened to declare that they discovered the 5th force of nature, which just so happens to be something called cosmic energy. And the cosmic energy may or may not be collected via satellite.
And when it is, it just so happens to be able to produce a specific beam, but you can't actually say that word openly here on TikTok. But it's ironic because I spoke about in the last video as well that there has officially been a Space Force unit created just last year, right? That is designated to defending the nation against adversary satellites that are capable of producing ground-based what? Yeah, once again, can't use that word. But gosh, that really makes you think, huh? Did you know Jeff Bezos just last year just so happened to build a SMART hub in the middle of the waters in Greece? And the main two areas that just so happen to communicate via data with the hub are Athens and Larissa. Wait, Athens and Larissa just had their worst fire seasons to date. Oh man, wait, what? It's not hard to research into these matters for yourself, people. I mean, come on. So many people rely on mainstream media and the news to paint this picture of truth for you.
This is the first that I'd heard about the Chilean fires, but as soon as I heard that it was a resort city, alarm bells started going off. So it's Maui Part 2. That's exactly what it appears to be. That's pretty suspicious. Not sure what can be done about it, because it doesn't look like there's anything we're going to be able to do about Maui other than keep talking about it until somebody with some cojones steps up and makes people start paying the price, start getting us some answers, start getting some answers for the people that live there, that lost everything, that lost loved ones. But anyway, that's the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed these clips. I will be back tomorrow with another one. I hope you all have a great, safe, fantastic Sunday, and I will see you tomorrow.